Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison back again with another phenomenal episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And this week, I've got a guy I've known for a long time. His name, Anthony Allen. Anybody from Seattle will know this guy as a big-time sports star, grew up in central Seattle, went to a rival high school of mine, Garfield. He was a couple years older. I looked up to this guy. He was a quarterback. He was a DB. He was a wide receiver, a punt returner, kick returner, pretty much played every position on the team and dominated the field. He also was a star basketball player for Garfield. I think they went to the championship a couple years in a row. They had really outstanding talent at that school, and then he got recruited all over. And ultimately ended up going to the University of Washington, and he was one of the many guys that came a little before, but a lot after, that created that momentum that Coach Don James created, went to the Rose Bowls, all these things. So just a very fascinating conversation with Anthony. Did it up in Seattle a number of months ago, and it's just the way things have played out. The pod is just now running, but talk about going on into the NFL, then getting cut, then getting picked up when the NFL players went on strike, and then he ends up being a star as a replacement player, and then being held on afterwards to play for the Washington Redskins, and then further, once his career was over, getting involved in youth sports and high school football, and real mentor to so many out there that have known Anthony for a long time. Again, big name in the Seattle region. And then recently, it was within the last year, his wife had a stroke. They've been together forever, and she's an amazing person. They're an amazing couple, and he has stuck by her and nursed her back to health, and she continues to get great improvement all the time. So it's a lot of fun to see him on Facebook as we mainly communicate, but Anthony and I have been teammates. We've been friends for a long time. It's just, it was a great thrill and honor for me to have him on the pod. Okay, so moving on from there, and we'll get to that pod in just a second, but back in Sun Valley, broadcasting live here, we've had about 3 feet of snow. It's been incredible. Anybody who likes the outdoors, likes to be in the snow, likes to ski, likes to skin, likes to snowshoe, a lot of S's in there. It's just been an absolute bundle of fun. And today, in fact, I saw 2 moose walking down the street. You don't see that on your streets every day. So that was a lot of fun. Again, I have launched a e-learning course, Finding Your Summit, and I just continue to get more and more inquiries about public speaking, all about people overcoming adversity, especially my own, and finding their way. So if you want to find out about any of that, you can do so at www.markpattisonnfl.com. If you have any buddy you want to refer to the show, you think they'd fit the profile, please do so. You can reach me through my website I just mentioned. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by Violets Are Blue, skincare.com. Great product. Okay. So on that note, let's go listen to Anthony. Here we go. Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison, and I'm back again with another great episode. Actually, I think this one is epic episode of Finding Your Summit. This week, I've got one of my longtime teammates and a guy who I played against in high school, Anthony Allen, here in Seattle, Washington. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Listen, we are here at the World HQ of the Silver Cloud Hotel, not too far away from where you and I both played football at the University of Washington. But where I wanted to start is really back with your high school days, and that's really where I got to know you. You were a couple years older than me. I played there were 2 big city high schools. One was Roosevelt, the other one was Garfield, and that's where you played.
Yes.
Yep, and you were a multi-sport star in both basketball and football. I'm not sure if you played or ran track or something.
Ran track for 2 years, my junior and senior year.
Okay, yeah, so going back, I mean, I just remember the epic battles of, because I was on the football team when I was a sophomore. I think you might have been a senior, and by that time you were playing quarterback.
Yeah. Yes.
So you had a very similar career to me in that your sophomore and junior year, you were a wide receiver.
Yes, exactly.
So who was your quarterback?
My quarterback those 2 years was Daryl Powell.
Okay.
And we ran the wishbone, and we had the Powell brothers, the quarterback and the fullback.
Okay, so how did you ever get the ball?
I very rarely got the ball. Daryl was not a great thrower of the football, and we ran the wishbone. So I got to return kickoffs and punts, which helped out with my numbers and helped get the football.
Yeah. So then your senior year you go to, and I'll never remember this because we're playing, so this is again down at the old Metro Stadium, downtown Seattle.
Yep.
And it was a big game, so it's our arch rival Garfield.
Mm-hmm.
And we're out there, and we're kicking butt, and we're doing well, and you guys are doing the same thing. Our records are about the same, and pretty much whoever wins that game is going to go on to state.
Yes.
And it's not set up like today where multiple teams get to go and have an opportunity to go play in state, right?
Yep.
The second and third place, they have a mini playoff or whatever. And I remember you were at quarterback, and you lined up, and I didn't play defense, but I was watching you because the ball was aligned near our hash line, and you just looked over and you winked at one of our guys on our team, and next thing I know, you just took off. And I can't remember if you threw it and you ran it, but it was just that confidence, and what Hugh Millen and I like to call it is that the athletic arrogance, which doesn't mean you're conceited. It just means you're very confident in your skill set, and you had a lot of it in those days.
I think I might have had a bug in my eye or something. I don't think I did. But I was confident. We had a good team, and we had some great battles with both of it over the years. I think you guys had a great running back then. I think that was
Rick Bloomquist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was definitely a tough one to bring down. But yeah, we had some great battles with you guys.
Yeah, no, it was epic. But you guys did win that. Now, did you go on in I can't remember the end result. Mm-hmm. Where did you guys place in state?
We ended up finishing third in state that year.
Third
Actually, my
state.
junior and senior year, we finished third in state. We lost to Snohomish my junior year with Kirk Marsh, Jerry McClain, and Brett Ingles. And then we lost to Sumner my senior year.
Okay.
It was Ron Arca, big fullback. And they went on to win state. Both those teams that beat us ended up going on to win state. Okay.
And then another thing that you were really talented in, because I can remember when we both were at the University of Washington, we'd have these little one-on-ones, and we had these little scrimmages.
Yeah.
And, you were a very talented basketball player, but also surrounded by a lot of talent at Garfield.
Yes. I mean, yeah, we were good. That's why I went to Garfield, to play basketball.
Yeah.
Football was secondary for me. I fell in that my sophomore year in high school, but basketball was my first love my whole entire life. So I went to Garfield to play basketball. And we ended up winning state my senior year in basketball that year. We went 25-2, something like that.
Now, was AV playing with you
yes,
at that
Alvin
time?
Bond was a sophomore then.
Okay.
Him and my brother were both sophomores, and Brad Watson, who later on went on to the University of Washington.
Yeah, all those
junior
guys
that
did,
year.
right?
Quentin Fields, Lamar Hurd, who went on to Oregon and ran track there and was a star in Oregon in track.
Yeah.
So I definitely had some talent around me.
Oh, man, that was great. So the great thing is that now you're positioned well when the University of Washington was just on that crest, that wave that was taking off. Really, Warren Moon back in 1977.
Yes.
I think you were class of 78
I
from
came
high
in
school.
78, the year after they won that Rose Bowl with Warren. I came in the next year.
Yeah. So now you come in and you were returning kickoffs and punts and things like that. And but of all the choices that you could make in the country, I don't know where you're being drafted or recruited, but why the University of Washington?
At that time, it was for Don James. It was because of Don James. Obviously, after they won the Rose Bowl that year, I knew I could stay here and play on a winning team here. Oregon recruited me at quarterback. Wyoming recruited me at quarterback. Notre Dame recruited me at wide receiver. Washington was the only team that recruited me at corner, which was my least favorite position to play was corner at that time.
Yeah.
But I still came here.
Yeah.
And luckily it worked out for me. It did and it didn't because it cost Dwayne Aquino and Tim Cowens, who was a freshman that year, who both played quarterback.
Yeah.
They got hurt. So that moved me from defensive back to quarterback for the next 2 years. So at least that got me on the offensive side of the ball. And then from there, they gave me a choice, and I was able to go to wide receiver.
Yeah, so I've seen Dwayne several times over the years.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, I've been traveling with UCLA football team until this last year, right? So with Jim Mora, another Husky, and so he has been coaching, I think, with Stanford the last several years in a row, doing a great job. Yeah, so yeah, no, I can remember that, and it just seemed like I had a very similar path my sophomore and junior year. I was a wide receiver, and that's when I started to take off, and then my senior year, Hugh Millen, who would later become our great Husky quarterback, and also in the 10-year NFL career, wasn't mature enough to take the reins, and I'd be out there on an island, and he couldn't get the ball. Literally could not take a 5-step drop without being sacked.
Yeah.
So they brought me in, similar to what probably they did with you.
Yeah.
and gave me the ball. And so I ended up in that same mode where I was being recruited at both quarterback and wide receiver. And probably by far the worst recruiting trip I had was at the UW.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
And they just aligned me with the wrong guy, and I'm not going to mention who that person is until we get off air.
Okay.
Right? But anyways, it just wasn't a great recruiting trip. But I can, it was Coach James. It was the program. I'd been sitting in the stands with my mother, who was sitting right over here. Hi, Mom. And a cheerleader at the UW. It was just something that tradition, and it seemed like Coach James really had a true vision, which I also bought into, like you.
Yes, and that's definitely true. I mean, I used to watch you when I was at Washington, and obviously followed you in your career, and again, playing the same position, wide receiver, going to quarterback, which gives you a lot of help, a lot of knowledge as far as reading coverage and everything, which also helped us both, I'm sure, in college once we played quarterback and then moved to receiver. Knowing how to read defense and knowing what the defense is trying to do to you, really, I'm sure, helped us both out.
So did you ever feel any, because I go back among, and I tell a lot of people, I got there and I didn't have that great work ethic. I'd been able to just kind of get away with it in high school, and I was like you, I was better than everybody else. But when I got to my first day, I remember looking out there and like, oh my goodness, everybody was all world someplace, and now it's because of the dedication they put into their body, to their mind, to their soul, to studying, to doing all those things, that they become these great players. And I had no clue what that meant. And so, did you ever go through any of that transition where you were looking at like dark days, like how are you going to get to there, or were you kind of already on that trajectory?
I think I was already on that trajectory. I mean, by having Coach Roberts, our coach at Garfield, that went to University of Washington the year before I did, I think he really did a great job of having us study, putting us in position to really, really, really compete, especially when you go to Garfield initially for basketball. And everybody's there is for basketball, and you got to win out. And you always, even through my Miller days, one thing we always did in the neighborhood period was that we always had to compete. Yeah. So I think that really helped out. And when I got to the University of Washington, it was, that was nothing. I was used to that. I was used to working out. I was used to competition. I was used to competing. So that wasn't that big a deal. But actually, it was a big plus for me, probably, more than anything.
Yeah, and I was competing too, but it was just really more about, I came in, I was 181 pounds, and I could not bench my weight. And I left there, right? And I left there where I was benching 350, right? And so, but it took me like the wake up call. Yeah. And really in life, in terms of like where my, maturity or my advancement in like really understanding what it takes to get someplace. I mean, that's really where that kicked in through Don James. It's like you either, you cut it or you don't. Yeah. And so it was but the thing that I look back on those times now compared to today is that they run all this thing called the spread offense, right? We've essentially got 4 wide receivers, and we were loaded. We were loaded. Yeah. I mean, it was you and Scans and Aaron Williams, and then it was myself and Danny Green, right? Yes. And Stransky was somewhere in there, and Lonzel Hill, right?
Yes, right after that,
And so we had plenty of guys that we could have just done serious damage on the field, and really talented quarterbacks.
Yeah, we came along a little too early. All this wide open passing stuff they're doing these days. But we had some great receivers. One thing you mentioned as far as even in the weight room, I did struggle there. I remember that's when I got moved to quarterback at the University of Washington at that time. They had us like not even with free weights, with universal weights. Yeah. So you couldn't even get to the heavy weights, and guys used to laugh us in the locker room and stuff. And then a year or so later, they finally got big enough and strong enough where you could use free weights. Yeah. And then you lifting weights with everybody. But that was one of the bigger things I think that, from maturity wise, that I had to get stronger and learn how to compete with the big boys in the weight room.
Yeah, well, so now my freshman year, I'll never forget this because so my senior year, end of football season now is, November sometime. So that's down in Metro Stadium, downtown Seattle, right?
Memorial Stadium.
Memorial Stadium, you're right.
Yes.
So Memorial Stadium, so there's, 3,000 fans that would show up total, ever. Yeah. And now the following year I graduate in May, and now it's August. I'm with the Huskies because that's where I accepted the scholarship. Yes. I'm a wide receiver with you. We're in the same rooms, all those things. Yes. And now we end up going to the Rose Bowl. Yes. And you were one of the starters, right? During that game?
That first year, Aaron Williams and Skansy started.
Yeah, well, you played.
We rotated. We all just rotated, but those two were the two starters.
Yeah, but I can remember standing out on the middle of the 50-yard line where they've got the big graphic of the rows, and I'm like, I'm a long way from Memorial Stadium, right, in Seattle. Yes. It was incredible. But so you got to play in the Rose Bowl.
Yes.
My freshman, so this would have been your junior and senior year. This would have been that's not true.
My sophomore year.
Because you redshirted.
Yes, I redshirted a year. So it was my sophomore year was our first year in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we came out that tunnel. I mean, I'd never played in front of 100,000 before. When we came out the tunnel, and you run out and you're excited and you pump and you get to the middle of the field and you turn around and you look, I still remember to this day, I could not tell where I came from. I turned around, all you seen was people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know if the locker room was. I don't know where I came from. So you just like lost it for a minute. But like you end up trying to regroup. But that was such a special moment.
Well, and then the special moment of the special moment is in the next year. Now, we're sophomore.
Yeah, we lost that first year.
We lost the first one in Michigan, and now we come back again this following year.
Yes.
And that year I redshirted, and now we go back to the Rose Bowl, and so we end up beating Iowa, I believe, 28-0.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The day that Jock Robinson grew up, the day that he stepped up as a freshman and won the MVP in that Rose Bowl. But yeah, we beat them 28-0. It was a great showing. We looked good, played well, learned a lot from the year before.
Yeah.
But we had a good team though.
I mean, look, especially for you and I, we look back on it now, and it's just you're so blessed. I think your freshman year, you probably went to the Sun Bowl in El Paso. Uh-huh. So for me, it was Rose, Aloha, and then Orange. And those two Aloha Bowls of one, which we're going to get into in a second. The first, so this would have been your senior year against Maryland.
Yes.
You end up catching the last second, it was a corner route on our sideline to win the game, and then to tie the game, and then Chuck Nelson came in and kicked it for the win, and we were out.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
It was great. I was 2 weeks ago. I interviewed a guy named Pete Koch.
Yeah, I saw the way you mentioned him. I saw him on Facebook, I think.
And so the great thing about him, and I didn't know this at the time, but he was a number 1 draft pick that year out of Maryland. And so so he didn't know that I played at Washington and all that stuff. And so as the story went along, and I can't remember if you were on our bus, but for some reason that we had changed at the hotel, and so we didn't have our uniforms and everything else stacked at the stadium. And so when we got back on the bus, we went back, we had our pads on, and I think it was Coach Roberts, who said, follow me off. And we all got off the bus, we surrounded the pool of the Sheraton, and we all jumped in the pool.
Is that right?
So fun. Yeah. And I know there were several buses going on, but I mean, just a great win and a great thrill.
Yeah.
So
that was, and the funny thing about that is you recall your experience after the game and going back to the hotel after the bus ride. I missed the bus. I had interviews all that time and came out of the locker room and everyone was gone. I am walking towards the hotel, got picked up by a family of Huskies in a station wagon and got a ride back to the place. And that's the true story.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you at all. I got left behind.
Talking about overcoming adversity and finding your way right there.
Wait a minute, didn't I just catch a game-winning touchdown and I got a carpool back with somebody? No, that's absolutely true. I got left behind.
That is awesome. So again, as I started this pod, it was interesting because you and I were teammates and we're competitors against each other, but I didn't realize how similar our careers, were. And so I'm a redshirt sophomore, but now you have graduated. Literally the winning catch, is amazing. And so now you go on, and so now that you got the NFL combines coming up, and at that time the USFL, which is now obviously defunct, it came into play. And so you were a 6th round draft pick. Right?
Yeah, by Atlanta Falcons.
By the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes. But
then you also get picked in the USFL.
2nd round by the Tampa Bay Bandits in the USFL.
Yeah. So why did you decide to go into the USFL at that time?
Well, the draft happened in the USFL first. And I got drafted by Tampa Bay in the 2nd round. Okay. That was because they started it in the spring.
Right.
So their draft was like in February. So I was drafted and had no plans on going at that time. And plus, I still wanted to wait and see where I went in the NFL. Yeah. So now I'm going to end up going 6 to Atlanta NFL. I said, okay, that's fine. Then negotiations got started and everything, talking about dollars. They wasn't talking about the kind of dollars we was interested in. So then Tampa Bay traded my rights to LA Express. Yeah. Of course, my high school coach was there, Al Roberts, with Hugh Campbell, who just came down from Canada. So they made a deal, got my rights, and gave me another option. And I ended up taking that option and going to LA Express, being with Hugh Campbell there, Al there. Plus, it was the first 8 games of the season was over, so I figured I would get a chance to just play right now.
Who's your quarterback, by the way?
quarterback when I got there was Tom Ramsey.
Okay,
from
I know
UCLA.
Tom, yeah.
And there was another one from USC. I have to get his name later, but Tom Ramsey was a starting quarterback when I got there.
Sure. And what was your experience in the USFL? Because you were there for a couple of years.
For 3 years. I was there for the whole entire state for 3 years. Halfway through the first season with LA, everything was fine. Got there. Last 8 games of the season, I think I caught more passes and yards than anybody in the USFL that year.
Yeah.
First game, caught like 5 passes for 105 yards and a touchdown after practicing for a week. So I had a great experience there. Then the next year, which is kind of the whole thing, we'll follow USFL, we lost our owner. So we get a new owner. Hugh Campbell goes to the Houston Oilers.
Yeah.
They're trying to recruit Warren Moon at that time.
Yeah.
So he leaves LA and goes to Houston. Now we got a new coach, and then we started the whole turnover thing, and getting traded I ended up getting traded that second year to Michigan. And I go to Michigan, and then we go into our third year after Anthony Carter got hurt. We go into our third year at the USFL in '85. Then there was a merger between the teams folded in Baltimore. I can't remember their names. Because
Baltimore Stars.
Yeah, the Baltimore Stars.
Jim Moore.
Yeah, Jim Moore was there. So I ended up going to that team.
Yeah.
And then Baltimore, they merged with the Michigan Panthers.
Yeah.
I'll be Michigan. And then they wanted me to take a pay cut. I said no. Got released from them. Ended up playing that last year in Portland. But so that was my whole experience, and which was even more interesting than that. A lot of people found out during the '85 season, once you played that whole season in the USFL, and it folded. Of course, it was in the summertime.
Yeah.
Well, now the NFL is getting ready to start. So you went from camp in the USFL, a whole football season in the USFL, then right into a camp in the NFL.
And you went to the
went to the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay, so the interesting thing now is that I played in that '84 team, which was a brilliant team, right?
Yes.
And so, but we played in the '85 Orange Bowl, and we beat Oklahoma.
Yes.
And so after that, now I'm in the queue, right? And so I go off the combines, and I end up getting drafted by the Portland Breakers.
Okay.
So you and I could have been teammates again, which I didn't know until I was reading through all this stuff. So I found that really ironic.
Yeah.
So I didn't end up going there. I went down to LA with the LA Raiders and went down that path. So now once you get to Atlanta, this is 1985, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you were down there for a couple of years.
Yes, 85, 86.
Yeah, and you had a pretty good career down there. I mean, you were catching a bunch of balls, and it was going pretty well for you.
Yes.
So what a lot of people don't understand about the NFL, because they just pick up the paper and in the back of the sports section it says transactions.
Yes.
And they don't really understand the impact of the lives that they have, where you're getting comfortable, certain people, you've got an apartment, you're paying certain bills, and then next thing, deling, and you're off you're gone, right? And now you got to start all over, and it's just mentally, it's just hard to bounce and learn new systems and new people and new coaches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So going into the 1987 season, I had been traded down to New Orleans. Okay, so I was down there, I was so fired up, and we played one game, and then we end up going on this strike, this NFL strike.
Yes.
Okay. So the thing that I forgot about is that ESPN had done a 30-30 piece on you about the year of the scab, right?
It was on the year of the scab period, but it wasn't on me per se.
Okay, so I just saw
the whole entire strike of the '87s. But they featured the Redskins.
Yeah. And by the way, I've got no judgment on any of this. And I was telling somebody else.
I think it was done about me, but it wasn't.
Well, the thing that was interesting that about that is a couple things that came to play is that you now you've been with Safeway Inc. For 30 years.
19 years.
19 years
in December.
Yeah, and they've got a hardcore union, right?
Yes.
And you were a union guy all the way?
No.
Oh, you're not?
History repeated itself. I would join the union when I first got to Safeway because you have to be in the union.
Okay.
Now management cannot be union.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
Now I'm back out again.
Okay, you're back out again. Okay, well, the whole point is that you had an opportunity, so this happened. Everybody went on strike.
Yes.
And so that the owners were trying to counter-strike by going out and recruiting players, good players like you, to come back and entice them to play in these different games.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of controversy. A lot of people were not too happy about it.
Absolutely.
And I got to tell you is that I didn't cross the line, but at the same time, I kept asking the guys. There was a guy named Hobie Brenner who was a tight end from USC, and he was our player rep on the team at the time in New Orleans. And I kept asking, they're like, can you just explain why we're doing this?
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense to me. And I was just doing this because everybody else was doing it. But it wasn't for any compelling reason. I mean, I was
yeah.
not carrying a torch. I was walking around with a sign like, I don't want to carry this thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand it, and they kept saying it's because of the future of the game, and I'm like, who cares, right? I mean, I get that, but how does that impact me today? Because my window is super short.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that you went out, and still today, now, were you playing with Washington Redskins at this time?
No. Well, I played with them during the strike.
During the strike.
So what happened, in 87, I got cut by Atlanta.
This podcast is brought to you by Laird Superfoods. Let me tell you, these creamers are so amazing. They're super tasty, super delicious, and what they are is whole, natural food ingredients mixed into these creamers. And I'm telling you, when you put this stuff into your drink, this powder substance, it is amazing. And their whole tagline is all about fueling your journey. You cannot go and actually power your way up a mountain, be in the pool, ride a big wave, unless you're properly fueled. And these guys are doing it all the right way. So where can you find this? At lairdsuperfood.com. And here's the kicker. If you use the code name MarkP20, that's Mark P20, you're going to get 20% off on your first order. So check it out, lairdsuperfood.com.
Well, I played with them during the strike. So what happened, in 87, I got cut by Atlanta.
Yeah.
We had a new coaching staff that came in, Marion Campbell.
Yeah. And
he had took over for Dan Henning, who was my coach in Atlanta, who actually drafted me in 83 in Atlanta. At this point, he got fired. He goes back to Washington. Now Atlanta's going another direction. They don't want me, and they cut me at the last cut. So when they cut me, I was like, okay. Another little side note on that, they didn't tell me that morning. The last cut, I figured I'm gonna get cut. I'm pretty sure I was gonna get cut. I knew that. You're supposed to get cut by like 9 o'clock, let's say. When 9 o'clock comes and goes and nobody knocks on my door.
So you think you're
at
9:30?
I go out, I'm going to breakfast. And all the reporter runs up on me. Hey, Mr. Anthony, how you feel? How you feel? Feel about what? That you got cut? I said, oh, I got cut? And of course, I'm nice. They pull it back like, did nobody tell you don't know? I said, no, nobody's told me. I figured as much. And they kind of backed away, and I went back and talked to management, and yes, I was cut. Now, so once I leave there, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to play in the strike.
Yeah.
I'm not playing. I mean, every team in the league called me.
Yeah.
And Atlanta got an FU. No.
Yeah.
Everybody else up in Atlanta just said no. So I'm sitting there a week before the strike games finally get ready to start, and the Washington Redskins call, Bobby Beathard calls on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And he asked, you want to play? I said, no. Politely, of course, he's the Redskins.
Yeah.
Charlie Casserly called the next night on a Monday. You want to play? You guys on the same team? I just told him no yesterday.
Yeah.
The answer is still no. Tuesday night, Dan Henning, my ex-coach, calls. Who obviously, when you play with a coach, you have a relationship.
Yeah.
They talk a little different to you than general managers you've never met before.
Yeah.
Even though you're highly respected, I've never met you. Henning calls. Anthony, we want you to play for us. I said, thanks, coach, but I'm not going to play. He said, well, let's take a look at it. He said, right now, you're out of the league. If you don't play right now in these strike games for us, you may not ever get back into the league.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay you top dollar. We're going to do this. You're going to start Sunday. You're going to play. You're going to get the ball thrown to you. We don't know how long this is going to last, but we'll take care of you. And I need you to come in here.
Yeah.
Okay, coach. Flew and got.
So what was that like, though? I mean, because it wasn't just like walking through. I mean, there was a lot of pretty angry, upset people, right?
Again, the beauty of me going so late, I missed 85% of all that. Because they practiced for 2.5 weeks, I missed all that. When I got there, it was game week. When I got there, it was Thursday. The game is, or Wednesday. The game's is Sunday. But there were still guys, when you got to the stadium at that point, then you had to go through some angry fans. But those guys had a lot of Redskin players, you've seen the footage on 30 for 30, coming out there to their practice facility, where of course, before they practiced that. Yeah. So they was out in the bushes and everything else and tipping buses over and breaking windows. I missed all that. So when I got there, it was just game day. So the only time I had to deal with it was just once you got to the stadium and driving through the fans.
So was it the first game that you made it back that you still set a record today for the Redskins, 255 yards, 3 TDs, 8 receptions?
Yes.
Still holds today.
Still holds. The yardage does. Most yards in one game.
Yeah, well, still 3 TDs for an NFL player is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, especially at wide receiver.
Yes.
Incredible. So that goes on. So now we emerge out of the strike, right? And now the dust is all settling.
Yeah.
Right,
yes.
So they hold on to you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What was that like when you reemerged into the locker room with the guys that had been out on the street, the strikers? You know, now they're coming back.
It was tough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was not as tough for me because I had played in the league. I knew a lot of the guys that was on that team, especially some of the big players. I knew Doug, I knew Gary Clark, I knew Ricky Sanders from the USFL. So I had relationships with some of the guys, so that made it a little easier for me. No matter what, though, the defensive guys who didn't know me didn't care. Most of your defensive backs, like, you know, we'll see, we'll test you out in the field. But again, then you get back into that whole competition thing, competing thing, and talking trash, if you will. Yeah. And I do that with the best of them, so we'll just see.
I know that.
So from that standpoint, you just had to stand up and count for yourself. But it was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the coaches and, you know, obviously Joe Gibbs, them, that was tough merging that thing together.
Yeah. Every team, I think, had their own challenges like that. So you end up playing 5 or 6 years,
yes,
right?
5 years in the NFL.
Yep. And then your exit, what was that like in terms of the transition from life after the NFL into life today?
Life after the NFL for me wasn't that big a deal. I think because initially going in and probably most of my life playing sports, and you know how it was playing sports, a lot of perks that come with it. Yeah. But if you just don't believe the hype and believe everything that's going on, I mean, I've been out with people, and whether it's clubs or wherever, they just tell you, hey, what's your? They don't even, they just tell you in their name what they do. It's football, it's basketball, it's what I do, it's my life. That's what I'm all about. It was never that for me. When the game was over, my last game I played was in San Diego in '89, and I left there, and they were like, you know, we'll call you if we need you. And I walked out of the building, I was like, that didn't sound good. I don't think they're going to ever call. Yeah. If they would have called, I would have been in trouble because I didn't work out again once I left there. Yeah. And actually, they did call. I think the Redskins called that year, but didn't call back. And I was like, well, good. So at that point, I was okay with it. I was ready to go. From the time the strike happened, I was okay with it. I didn't like the way it left in Atlanta. Yeah. I didn't like the way they did me. I didn't like the way, but again, everybody make decisions. But I didn't like the way that went down. But once I left Washington or left San Diego that year, I was fine. Got back home, was married. My 2 daughters, wife, we were good. Ready to go on with your life, get a job, work. And that's some of the trouble with a lot of people, a lot of athletes, whether it's entertainers or whatever. Whenever you do leave something like that and the money, you feel like you just can't go be a regular person and get a regular job. Yeah. And I'm like, well, most of your parents got regular jobs, or your people you know have regular jobs. How come I can't have a regular job? Yeah. And if you believe that and you don't want to get a job, then it's just going to get worse for you. Yeah. Because you're just not doing what you need to do from outside, people looking in and just seeing what you used to be or what you used to do. And you had to get through that. When I went to work at Safeway, it was like, you play football. You didn't retire. You didn't rich. You didn't make. Everybody don't make millions of dollars playing football. Yeah, you know, yeah. Well, you've got the right mindset, right? You play and you go on with life, and that's what I did. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, that's the right way, the right approach, and with that kind of approach, you know, you can actually function in life, you know, going forward and have a very healthy existence versus living back on things you did 30 years ago, right? Yeah. There's a lot of people that are still doing that. I know that, but that's why I'm trying to do a podcast. So, all right. So after you get out, there's a stretch that you had where you're doing some coaching back at your alma mater in high school at Garfield. Yes. And it was going pretty well, right? It was going. Yeah. Well, the second stretch. The second stretch? The first stretch. I had a couple different stretches. Actually, our lives are so much interesting. Yeah. My first year I ever coached high school football was at Roosevelt. Is that right? They didn't know that. I knew you were a good man. My first year, D.R. Clausen was the head coach. Yeah. And former Huskie? Yes, former Huskie linebacker. Yeah. He had Dennis Brown. They was running the wishbone, and he called me one year. Yeah. And I went and was OC, if you offensive coordinator. Yeah. Called plays for him for 1 year, and we had a good little team. Of course, the next year, something happened at Garfield with a coach, and they were like, you bet not, you bet. And I left and went to Garfield. Yeah. And I coached there with Mark Stewart for 2 years. Yeah. And then Mark gave that job up, and then I didn't coach for a while until probably 15 or 20 years later, I ended up back at Garfield with Coach Al Roberts.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounded like you had a good run. I mean, there's nothing better than being able to impact kids' lives, you know?
It is.
To be out there. I know you left under some, different circumstances at the end there, but, at the end of the day, it's a loss for those kids because of the impact. You're such a stand-up guy, and you've achieved so much to be able to give that back to your community and not have people recognize that. Is just it was a bummer.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was tough. Tougher probably on my wife and my daughters than me.
Yeah.
If you're coaching anything, if you're hired, you're gonna be fired one day. Actually, the same guy that gave me the job out of the blue fired me just as out of the blue. And he wasn't out of the blue. Tony Wroten, one of our star basketball players, played football for the first time that year, his junior year.
Yeah.
And in the first game, early in the third quarter, tore his knee up. So everybody was like, you're the guy, or the principal at least said, you're the guy, you caused that. And some things went down before that, but that started that. But that was the beginning of my demise when Tony Wroten got hurt and couldn't play basketball. Yeah,
well, look at, people all have to make their bed, and, you made yours, and again, you still made a big impact on a lot of people's lives,
It was a great experience. If I could, I wish I would have still been at Garfield. I love coaching at Garfield. I love being around the kids. There's a lot of kids that need a lot of help. I mean, and there's great support from a lot of the all the coaches on the east side, with the Skylines, the Woodinville, the Bothos. It still got a lot of great coaches in that league, and there was a lot of great guys there when I was coaching.
So the last thing I want to talk about in approach is I want to talk about your wife, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that, it was right around when you were getting done playing in the NFL. Maybe it was a little bit before that you guys got married. So you're high school sweethearts, right?
Yes, we met at 14 years old, freshmen in high school.
Yeah, so the thing that's been such a beautiful thing for me to see from afar, and when I say afar, it means, post on Facebook once in a while from you, is you seem to have this great connection with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was recently that she had a stroke, right?
Yes, September 3rd.
Yeah, and so what did that do in terms of knocking her off her feet or your feet together? I mean, it seems like what's really held that whole thing together is your love for each other and being there for each other. You were down at the hospital all the time, and you're constantly that positive voice, like almost like that coach back at Garfield, like, hey, you're going to get back, and you're well on your way.
Yeah, it was tough. I get the first call. I was in Atlanta for the Huskie game, beginning of January, for that Auburn game, and I was on my way home that day. My daughter called and told me she had a stroke. So obviously, when you shaking, you shook, and when you get back, and actually just, she still asks me to this day, "Are you surprised?" I said, "Surprised about what? How strong I am and how well I'm doing." I'm like, "No. You've dealt with me all these years. I know how strong you are. I know what kind of woman she is, and she's very strong, and she's raised her daughters that way. But it was a shock to the family. It was a blow, but we all sucked it up. We all did our part, myself and the girls, and she did her part, and she's well on her way, to healing. But it was, you hear about things, you see things, but it's always somebody else for the most part, and like all of us, we all get hit with something at some point in time. It's going to happen, and this was finally our turn, our time, and we all had to do what we had to do to get through it and survive it and support her.
Well, you talk about, sometimes you hear about from other people, or it's just, it's not you. Well, that person was me, right? Yeah. And my mom, my sweet mom over here, and her husband, my dad, had a massive stroke, and it just completely knocked all of his communication grid out, and it was just a complete blow because nobody saw any of this stuff coming. Yeah. But the blessing, in a weird way, in his case, is that after probably a month and a half, we knew that there was no possibility that he was going to make it back, and so he and I had been over the years talking about this when everything was good,
is that right?
About if things happen when they're bad.
Yeah.
And that, we both hoped that, we wouldn't want to live that kind of life of existence where you're just laying in a bed and you can't communicate or talk.
Yeah.
So, I feel that he's in a way better place today than he ever would have been if he would have survived that, because it would have been awful.
Yes.
And so in our case, he moved on. But in your case, she had a different circumstance and she's been able to fight her way back. And is she back in your house yet, or where is she?
She's back in her house. She's been back in her house for over a month now. It was a small stroke. It happened in the back right side of her head, which affected her left side. And actually, from the time she went to the hospital and after the girls called 911, which is I'm sure a lot of women have some issue with when they go to the hospital, is they didn't think she had a stroke. So she had to come and kept insisting to them that she had a stroke. No, I had a stroke. Well, raise your right arm, raise your left arm, and they were both functioning at that time. Now, 5 hours later, she had no movement in her left arm or her left leg. She never really lost her voice at all. It might have slurred just a little bit, but there was no twisting of her face at all.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, what I tell most people in the beginning of it was, when you talk to her, she wasn't in any physical pain, and she could talk. If she didn't have to move her left arm or her left leg, you would think she's fine. So we were blessed in a lot of ways that it was as mild as it could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been a whole lot worse, and from your father, you know that.
Yeah.
I mean, so some of us are just blessed that it's not as bad as others, and all the people we met with that was in rehab that had strokes and stuff, everybody got their own stories and got different levels of it, but ours was just, thankfully, wasn't as serious as your father's was, and she's on her way to getting back.
That's awesome. Well, another super positive light in your life right now is the fact that you've got 2 daughters, right?
Yes.
And like me, I mean, maybe I've just been following you around all these years, right? We were both wide receivers, both quarterbacks. We were both with the UW, right? We both played in the NFL about the same amount of time.
We got no family history somewhere around here.
And so, I've got 2 beautiful daughters, Claudette and Amelia, 19 and 22. So it's just, it's been great. But, again, when you have that love that's all, holds the glue together, and it's the whole village of the family that make things go. Yeah,
it is. I mean, we are so blessed, and girls are doing so well. You're the 3 years apart, mine is 6 years apart. But it's good. They work hard. My youngest daughter, she was so disappointed when she didn't get accepted at UW.
Wow.
But she got in, and she went to Eastern and graduated there, summa cum laude. Then she went back to UW and got her master's.
Wow.
So at least she's finally got to be a part of a Huskies for a little bit there.
Yeah.
But the girls are great. They work hard. They're doing very well, and life's good. We love them to death, and we have no complaints about them at all.
Yeah. So finally, we'll tap really quickly into the Husky thing, just because that's our common bond here.
Yes.
But so, what do you think of the new coach?
I like Pattison. I think he's a wonderful coach. I mean, from the moment they hired him, I thought it was a good hire.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had a little struggle last week, but that's life. But I think he's a great coach. I think he's doing a great job. I think he's definitely brought the program back to more than back to where they were.
Yeah.
I think he's doing an awesome job.
Well, I think you and I were both influenced in a big-time way on many different levels from Coach Don James.
Yep.
The guy, we didn't know this at the time, but he would later become a Hall of Fame coach. He's got the statue now in front of the stadium,
Yep.
and it's just been amazing to see the development of the team finally to come back and be relevant again, the stadium to be rebuilt, and the fans, crazy and enthusiastic about their team on the field.
Yes. I mean, it's definitely special. I mean, Don James, it was again, I said, that was the least position I wanted to play was corner. Never played in corner in high school, but I went there for him because of him. And I still remember even on our recruiting trip, he came over to the house. We had some mix-up one of the recruiting trips in Oregon. That's when they came to maybe their last visit. Yeah. And Oregon had 6 coaches in the house. And then University of Washington shows up with Don James and 6 coaches. And our living room was not that big. But I told him once that I was thinking about going to Oregon. He's like, you go to Oregon, I will beat you with a baseball. But he threatened me a couple times. But he had no worries there. I was always wanted to be a Husky, and I'm glad it all worked out, and glad I could be a dog.
That's awesome. Well, listen, make sure you tell him hi for me. As I said before the pod, both Hugh Millen and Jim Moore say hi back to you.
Please tell him I said hello.
Absolutely. So, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure and joy to get caught up with you, old teammate, old friend, and just you're doing so many positive things, and best of luck to you and your wife, Renee, in terms of your path forward.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and meet this wonderful lady over here, your mother.
That's right. Awesome. All right, buddy.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Hey, and thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. Okay, if you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisonnfl.com. That's Mark, M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.